Hello, I'm going to talk about two albums recently released. Um, Here they are: Mirror to the Sky by Yes and Flote by Jethro Tull, or Rock Flute, if you want a sort of English version. Um, the reason I put them on the same video is that they're both the result of the same process. In practical terms, the emergence from the lockdown, which is something which still I don't think had done anyone any good. It's changed everything. Um, in practical terms, but that's not musical. Um but also, they both represent the making of classic albums, both rather late in their careers. So, first of all, I'll talk about Mirror to the Stars. First track, nice rocker with those tasty nuances. Terrific bass from Billy Sherwood. And yes, are great. They're good again. This is not an attempt to reiterate what they were in the 70s, though many people think that it was. Sorry, wrong way around. Many people seem to think from videos I've watched and listings and so on that it was. This is a new band that has actually reached a standard or a quality which is really great. Someone once said that every work of art is created by a crisis or crises, and these two albums both bear that out. The album preceding Mirror to the Sky, Mirror to the Sky, sorry, Mirror to the Stars, Mirror to the Sky. The album preceding it, The Quest, is a good album, yes, but it lacks vitality. Is this a concept album? Of course it's a concept album. Its focus is on an honest meditation, on an honest meditation, making use of the sky. There are notes denoting day sky and notes, not many people will notice this, but there are notes expressing the existence of night sky. And I think they just changed from a major chord to a seventh, or some sort of change like that. Lyrics. John Davison is not John Anderson. He sounded before, a great many Yes vocalists sound as though they've been chosen because they sound like John Anderson, and sometimes they sound as though they're trying to write like John Anderson. But it's definitely not the case in John Davison's case. I think there is a genuine similarity, and he was chosen because he is a great alto singer. But his writing is much simpler than John Anderson's. Steve Howe, classical influences, just luscious. Looking at my notes here, hope you don't mind. There is the presence of soft rock, and this was called soft rock, which the classic album review described as a bit Peter, Paul and Mary, but I think that's rather unfair. I think Yes, at the moment, prefer, for example, Eagles to death metal. But the nature of soft rock is possibly a point of tedium, but it's saved on this by changing in tempo and overall imaginative composition and playing throughout this album. Excuse me. Beautiful playing of themes on guitars and keyboards, I noticed. Now, about the soft rock again, this album, like many contemporary albums, is not aggressive at all. The 70s albums, prog albums, and Yes albums, especially as that's what we're talking about, had tended to have an aggressive quality, which I think has all but disappeared in recent years. It was, of course, it was inherited from the 50s rock and roll guys in the States, like Elvis Presley, Little Richard, and Jerry Lee Lewis. And in England, in the music of the Beatles and the Who. But in, at the moment, I think it seems to be confined to certain metal bands. If I don't think it's very well stated. I mean, turning up a loud electric guitar and playing it faster does not aggressive music make. But anyway, I digress slightly there. Aggression, perhaps, was a bit of a duck egg in popular music, some ways. So, if to be sort of polite, we call it energy or edginess. Yes. Excuse me. Ah, yes, the track Luminosity. John Davison really shines on this track. Jay Shellen's drums sound great. Jeff Downes' ambient and nimble keyboards. Is this a philosophical concept? Put it this way, I don't think I'll ever look at the sky in the same way again after listening to this. And I admit I've read through the lyrics as well. Now the use of orchestra, the orchestral music, matches the core band and communicates emotion. So when the orchestra comes into its own, it adds depth and in almost a Duke Ellington sort of way, as well as a classical influence, it just adds to the core band that feeling of emotion, the kind of emotion, I suppose, that the Romantic poets expressed, held to be important, and sought to also, of course, Beethoven and other composers sought to inspire in people emotion. Yes. Now, there is one exception to this concept that I've been discussing, and it's just one of the tracks. Is it they living on their dreams? I knew it was something about dreams. Now, this examines a particular relationship, a very peculiar track to put in this album. But it is a wedding that it's about. So it's about it doesn't come down one side or the other, or whether this couple is honest or are they false. Is it going to last? All these questions come up in this. So I suppose it adds in a very subtle sort of way to the overall meditation about the sky and the oneness of humanity under the sky, of course, implying the existence of God. Now, let's see what else I've got on my notes. See? Ah, yes. I've just come to the final track now. It's a rather somber acoustic guitar and vocal track about the possibility of praise and rising above the kind of cycles which oppress human life. What else have I written? The sorrows, rise above the sorrows. Of course, the answer is in the sky. Excuse me a moment. And now, Flote, or Rock Flute, which was released several weeks before the Yes one, but I had to wait for the Made to the Sky. I've been researching the situation a bit, and I thought I should do them both together. Rock Flute by Jethro Tull. Again, as in with the Quest, and then Mirror to the Sky, which is a vast improvement. It's much more imaginative. It's much more unified as an album. The musicianship's better. John Davison comes into his own as an individual talent. Similarly with Rock Flute, the album The Zealot Gene, it was a very good album, but it lacked that fullness, I think, and completion. I always felt when I listened to the last track that it wasn't a very good ending. There's no sort of exposition or finale. It was just another song. But Rock Flute has a great structure. It's a huge album. It could be the biggest concept album ever, in some respects. The history of the gods and creation itself are explored or also inserted into some contemporary situations, mostly personal ones, which is very right, as I'll explain. I studied Old Icelandic literature. So as an educator, I think that Ian Anderson and the band, of course, I've just really achieved something spot on here with Norse myth and cultural forms, Nordic cultural forms generally. I think he's done a great job. He's done me a great favour in some ways, because these texts and stories are just not popular enough for us, and there aren't many of us medievalists. This album is doing a great job. The importance of Norse heritage, how it enriches life, even more than perhaps Shakespeare, for example. The rock band is impeccable on this. All great players, without exception. Perhaps it's a pretty piece of paganism. A pretty piece of paganism is what William Blake said about Wordsworth's poetry, and later William Wordsworth said exactly the same thing, a pretty piece of paganism, about John Keats' poetry. Now, it's such a huge concept album, like Homo Eroticus was with one of Ian Anderson's solo albums. that there will be accusations, no doubt, of pretentiousness, but I don't think he is pretentious. He, he creates masterpieces without even noticing it. He does it just by doing his job as a writer and musician to the best of his ability. Excuse me. I'll look at my notes again. Scott Hammond is a solid drummer. He's been criticised for being pedestrian, and I think that's probably a result of there being a lot of hi-hat playing. But the guy's inventiveness and his skill, if you listen, can't be denied. Joe Parish James is an incredible guitarist on this, electric guitarist. And he plays acoustic guitar also very well, and mandolin, I think. Mandolin. Who else? And of course, David Goodyear and John O'Hara are stalwarts of Tull and Ian Anderson's solo band. Are really great musicians, really reliable musicians. And let's not forget, of course, Anu Birna is a beautiful Nordic girl that, a woman, should I say, that recites some of the old Icelandic texts at the beginning and just before the end, and then there's a little bit just nearer the end of the album. In fact, she quotes from the Völuspá. The Völuspá, as it's properly pronounced, is the first poem of the Poetic Edda, which is the main source of the stories of the Norse gods and also the heroes. The Völuspá is regarded as the greatest work, and it involves a wise woman or seeress, and sometimes negatively regarded as a witch or a sorceress, but who prophesies the end of the gods, of the Ragnarok, which Ragnarok is the last track on Flote, is it? No, it's not. But it's mentioned in the words. Right. Let's see what else I've got. Of course, I should have mentioned before, Ian Anderson's flute playing is at its best here. I don't think he's done a better flute performance. Not only rock flute, but passages of classical phrasing and folk styling. Voice. Ian Anderson's voice, which has been described as the elephant in the room. Now, okay, so he hasn't got the kind of strong voice, strong timbre that he had in his early days. His timbre, I think it's all but gone as a singer. But he managed to make good use of the voice he's got, and he's got very good pitch, and he hits the notes perfectly. And there's also some great speaking of poems in the album. Am I the only person here who likes his recent singing? I think it's an acquired taste now. And you can get used to it if you keep listening to these albums. They are what they are. This is going to rank very highly on my list of Jethro Tull, my top 10 Jethro Tull albums, as is Mirror to the Sky and my top 10 Yes albums. Let's look Flutter. That's Mirror to the Sky. And I'm going to put this one, and I may be committing hubris with some, but from some people's point of view, but I'm going to put this right next to the Yes album. because I think it is the Yes album of now, and hopefully it will lead to more wonderful work coming afterwards, as did the Yes album then. I think it's as good an album. It's entirely different. There's no hard rock really on this. There's a lot of hard rock on the Yes album, but it's what I was saying before about aggression in music, or aggressive music. This is much more a unified album than that, which is a selection of songs, revolutionary songs for the time, of course. It's prog rock. And this one, I'm going to put right next to a passion play, because it's a very well realized concept album. Excuse me. It's a well realized concept album, like a passion play. It's unique, like a passion play. It also will probably get the same criticism, not the same criticism, but in this case it will be probably Anderson's voice. In the passion play case of a passion play, the criticism is generally that it's either convoluted or undecipherable, difficult to understand what it's about. It's not difficult to understand what this one is about. And the musical expertise, or the achievement, is a very similar one to that with or on a passion play. Again, I'm probably committing hubris with die-hard Tull fans and even music fans. I don't think these two are as legendary as the albums that I'm putting them with, but they may become legendary in the future. There's a long time to go yet. So, I think that's all I have to say about those two. I'm going to partly call this video Prog Phoenix, because these two bands have rises from the ashes, different ashes perhaps, but I think they've both risen from the ashes and become great again as they were in their heyday, even in the different lineups. This is Showing Green saying bye bye.